So hey, there was a song drop, right? Like we don't plan this around song drops anymore, but we had a song drop, like a singular
We had a song
drop.
that dropped.
Yes, and it had a few charts in it. Like I liked some of the charts.
Welcome to the Almost Perfect Cast. I'm Drew, aka Wordis.
Sorry, I ruined it. Hi, I'm Zephyr.
I'm Eesa.
And I'm Jelly Slosh.
And today, well, it's SMXmas, right? So we're going to talk about our Christmas wish list. No, we're going to talk about tournaments and how much we love them, because that's like a third of our topics, and we're due on a tournament episode, right? We had two big tournaments this last month. One big tournament, one medium tournament, and hey, we've been looking for an excuse to bring Jelly Slosh on. This is our excuse. It's it right here. We've been wanting to bring him on since Red October happened. He was our co-TO at Red October this year. And next year, at whatever events we're running in Las Vegas, he's been knighted, he's been bestowed the title of tournament admin. That is because I have crowned myself event coordinator, which is basically like empress of the tournament. And so, yes, Jelly is our lofty titled tournament admin, which means he's going to like write all our stuff. But we'll talk about that later. We do this podcast in an order, don't we? Hey, stuff happened in the last month. There were events. Gosh, we can talk about Eclipse in more detail later, because that's gonna be big. And so is BHOP Ball. I think we're gonna roll those up into our main topic, right? But what else has happened in the last month, guys? I don't have fingers. I can't scroll through my phone.
Yeah, IAPA happened right after our last podcast, right?
Did that happen after our last podcast?
It was right before Thanksgiving.
Oh, that might have happened right after our last podcast. Yeah, I mean, we have a new format, right? We said we're burned out and we're going to go to a static schedule, and then we couldn't figure out exactly when to start this month because holidays are confusing. But we swear these next month will be on a static schedule. IAPA definitely happened. I don't remember if that happened before last drop or not. What got announced there? Were there any big events that happened at IAPA or any? They sold some machines.
Oh yeah, we sold some machines. The most notable thing is we got to showcase the locations that went public. It pulls off the data from Xenius iVanisher with some work done by the Step Revolution team to like theme it and also like display the data more correctly, along with being able to hide private locations as well. And then we got a song drop at IAPA as well. The 4-song drop. I think it had Party.
Oh yeah,
Elysium.
yeah. That happened before. Okay, that definitely happened before our last podcast, because we talked about those.
Okay.
But we can hear from someone who is at IAPA.
Right. Yeah, we can get our man on the ground. Yes. Tell us what is Kyle Ward like in the year 2023?
Oh, he's very passionate about the project. He loves talking about it very much. He doesn't post a lot online, but he definitely keeps up with everything that we're all doing. I got to meet a lot of different people in the industry. Some of them were interested in running events too. So I got some contacts about running events. I was like, oh, cool. Maybe one day I'll do this enough where I can like leave my job and just do this full time, you know?
Isn't that what we all want?
Yeah.
So you didn't hear about the super secret big tournament yet?
No details. I did ask him. There was a slight passing conversation, but all he said is wait and see. That's as much as I got out of him about the
super secret.
That was the Puma thing, which is
right.
another thing that happened. There was the shoe thing where they had 4 machines at one event, and they were like custom.
Oh yeah, the Rihanna shoes.
Oh yeah.
The Rihanna shoes. Yes.
The ones that were wrapped with their own special skin.
Yeah. I haven't gotten my Pumas yet. I'm looking for them. Looking for them in the mail. Come on, Rihanna, send me my Pumas.
Yeah.
I'll show them off really good on my stages. Look, I've got no shoes right now. And that's totally not because I injured my toe and can't wear my cute matching shoes that go with this outfit. Yeah, I think besides the tournaments that happened in the last 2 months, upcoming ones, we got a couple coming up. Winter Ball is coming up in February. Does anyone
Yep.
have the exact dates? Anybody with
Yep,
fingers?
February 23rd to 25th, because I just made the Start GG page about an hour ago.
Yeah, Meister G's running that one.
Yep. So Master G was my co-TO at Byte 6. So we're switching around this time where I'll be assisting him. He's taking the charge on it. He actually just successfully made it through neck surgery. So he's probably not going to be able to participate in the tournament, but he still wants to, be there to see it through. There's a lot of interest in this tri-state area for it because it's driving distance for a lot of people from like New York, Pennsylvania, even Baltimore.
Right. Yeah, you kind of have that East Coast, that Northeast Coast area where there are a lot of, even Byte was in that range where
Yep.
as long as you're anywhere in the Northeast area, you can drive there or take some kind of plane or train there, and it's a short trip. And it's really easy for a lot of these players. It's nice to see these events like BHOP Ball, where you can just, once every month or two, there's an event you can go to. I really like seeing that.
Yep. No, we need some more on the West Coast in addition to that too. Just
Yes,
to,
we need more on the
round
West
it out.
Coast. Well, that's there. People, you say that, but people are going to say Zephyr. That's you, and I'm like, no, I already run my one giant event. That's the only giant event I want to run, unless I run 2 this year. But like, I run events out of Las Vegas. I don't like traveling. I make you all come to me. That's what I do. But yes, I might make it out to. Where is it that Miko's from? She's talked about doing a tournament.
North California.
Yeah.
And then, additionally, MagFest is happening in January as well, too. And there's no SMX tournament there, but SMX will be present there.
Yeah. And stay tuned for other large events that might have SMX present in the near future, of which I cannot talk about right away.
Yeah. Just some predictions. I expect us to see CEO again in the summertime if that happens. And I expect to see Byte around August again as well, at the minimum. So at least 2 other big ones to look forward to.
Yeah, expect a fall tournament in Las Vegas next year, too. It just, we don't know if we're partnering with someone yet. So
Yep. And then
we don't
if
know
we
if
have
it's
the clips
happening late
again,
October or early October.
And then Mistaken Lake, if their round 1 gets StepManiaX, I imagine they'll add it to their roster too for like a late September event or early October if they do it around the same time frame. So we have plenty of events to look forward to.
Mm-hmm. So hey, there was a song drop, right? Like, we don't plan this around song drops anymore, but we had a song drop, like a singular
We had a song that dropped.
Yes, and it had a few charts in it. Like, I liked some of the charts. That 20, like, I don't think we have to like everybody nominate 3 charts kind of deal, because there are so few, right? There are 10 charts. I think we all liked the same ones, right? Like, every little 20 was nice for the Wild. That was fun.
The Wild was all right.
I liked the Wild. I liked the 24th note streams. That was good.
The Wild, I thought, was pretty basic. The patterns especially were just kind of there to make sure that anyone that's interested in playing the Wild chart, since it's kind of a special song, I feel like they made it a little bit generic. That
like
was
Crab Rave?
I suppose. But I thought kind of the same thing about the full chart as well. But I really, really enjoyed the dual chart, the dual plus chart.
That dual 20, everybody loves it.
Yeah, I think it had the most notes or steps, and I just was the most interesting and varied compared to the other charts that seemed to be kind of a little basic.
Yeah, I don't have any strong opinions about the chart. Like, it felt good to play. That's as much as I have to say about it. I played it with DDR Chad a couple days ago. We had 1 and 2 on it respectively, so it feels pretty good, like musically, at the time. Like, it didn't take us a lot of effort to like adjust to the timing on it. I think the only gotcha for me my first time was like there's some foot switches that kind of caught me off guard, but other than that, it was very simple to adjust to that. The Wild chart, that is, if that wasn't implied.
Hey Eesa, any fun charts? Any edits that have come out in the last few weeks you're into? I know you've been playing a lot of stamina, or is it ITL you've been playing?
Yeah, no, it's the Winter Groove. Winter Groove's in January.
Right. You're prepping for Winter Groove. That's another tournament that's coming up.
But it's just
Locally.
ITG, not SMX. But yeah, I got to go to any Vegas tournament. So easy to go.
You've
I
got a
haven't
house you
played.
can stay at.
I haven't even played the one Son. There hasn't really been any edits yet anyway. I think people are busy with the holidays. But hopefully more edits soon. Make them, guys.
Yeah, I just played one by JJK recently, the low workout edit. I don't know how recent that is, but it was on the featured page, and that one's pretty fun to play.
Yeah,
Very
it's a 26,
stamina.
right?
Yeah, I started
Yeah.
playing it and I was like, oh, stamina. I can't do this right now.
Yeah.
The only real
I-
criticism I have about that chart is like everything starts on your right foot. So like it would be nice if JJK is listening to have some that start on your left foot as
Yeah,
well.
that's something that Zom talked about during the SGDQ run when they played his edit for In My Dream or whatever. He said like he basically made it so every stream started on the opposite foot of the previous one, so it was like balanced. But yeah, I think that edit chart, the JJK edit, I think it's already been APC'd at least once. I think it was Dill. I think there might have been one other person, but yeah. It's a good one.
And then
It's just like a stamina. Pretty stamina.
This is rock and
focused.
roll one is pretty good too by JJK as well.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I remember that one slightly. Not too well.
Yeah, it's a little bit of stamina, a little bit of bracket switching as well too. But it's done very like elegantly. It's not like overdone. It's not like overused. It's a good bracket stamina chart.
He does a good job at making things not like over the top. Like very, very polished usually. He does a lot of I know he does a lot of like play testing.
Yeah, I think for him, as long as it feels good to him, I think it's all right. It passes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, those are only the two edits I've played recently myself. I don't really explore the edits as much as I should.
Gotta grind those leaderboard points. They're the most important thing in the world.
You got to play that edit I said last time, the Telperion Energizer Full. That's still all I think about as far as best edit. So good.
Okay, you said that like
right now,
2 months ago. I don't think I've still played it.
Oh my god, it's the best. Play it.
All right,
yeah, I'm just
do we
looking.
have more?
The last edit that I think I bookmarked that I actually remember is the rock and roll one. So I don't have any other ones.
All right, moving on. Main topic. Hey, this is an excuse to bring Jelly Slosh onto the podcast, plus an excuse to talk about a clips that just happened, which is, I think, I actually went back and looked. I think it's actually the third biggest tournament that we had in 2023, if you count people signed up and if you count like, you know, the big boys and girls who showed up. It definitely had a pretty good top 8. It was very entertaining. It had hiccups because that's what tournaments do. And I want to talk about some of them. And I want to talk about a lot of things in running tournaments because it's my favorite subject. I can talk about tournaments all day. We could talk about tournament structure. Those are the things we're talking about, right? Right, Jelly? Jelly, do we call you Jelly or do we actually call you your given name here?
You can call me Jelly. You can call me Ton, whiwhichever you prefer. I respond to both now.
Okay.
I had not been
Ton
called
is
Jelly.
okay.
Yeah, I had not been called Jelly until I joined the SMX Discord because I always used my first name and pump it up.
I mean, we're in the internet age, so if you don't respond to your like screen name or whatever, what are you even doing?
Yeah.
Right. So, okay, Ton, your CVs, you've got a lot of tournament running experience, especially in the Pump It Up community, but I think you've run more StepManiaX tournaments than anyone else as well. You have a lot of background running these events. You are the guy when it comes to Bite. You ran Bite 5 and 6. Did you also do 4?
No, I had, Bite 5 was my first Bite ever.
But you've done a ton of pump tournaments before. You've done you do a ton of locals in Texas.
Yeah, and go back further. I used to do fighting games as well too. Street Fighter 4 and Marvel vs. Capcom 3 as well. So it predates the dance game era too.
Mm-hmm. Right. I think God, and you counted against me, and like let's see, my first ever dance game tournament was DDR in like 2007, and then I didn't do another one
The one
until
that Kyle helped you out at.
yes, the one that
Yep.
Kyle saved my bacon at. And then the very next one I ran was like the side tournament in April for StepManiaX when there was a DDR tournament at Red Note. So I've only run 4 of my own StepManiaX tournament. There was April and May at Red Note, and then 2 Red Octobers, and then I helped run Bite. And that's it. I've got 5 StepManiacs and 1 DDR tournament. I think you've got like 4 times that many dance game tournaments on me.
Yeah, but when you consider the lifespan of StepManiacs, that's a lot of events.
Right, sure, and a couple of them are big, but I'm trying to pump you up here because you have the background. You can go through and gosh, the tournament structure we had at Bite this year was one that I didn't really know until you ran it. And hey, that's I guess what do we want to talk about first? You're the guest host, so you can pick or I can pick.
Yeah, so I guess we'll start with let's talk about Eclipse first, since that's like fresh on my mind. We just did our staff retro this week, so a lot of the feedback is still fresh in my mind. So let me start with the results of Bite. So if not Bite, Eclipse. If y'all didn't watch Eclipse, the top 4 finishers were Paranoia Boy, who also won Red October, second place at Bite 6, and first place at CEO. So that's 3 first place finishes at different events. Tony's resume is insane for StepManiacs.
Tony 3 trophies, we know.
Yep. Second place was Spencer, who got first at Bite 6. It was a rematch for them at Eclipse. Nailbiter 10-song grand finals, came down to the final song, which was The Other Side. If y'all have not watched our grand finals, y'all gotta watch. It's like they were trading APCs back and forth with each other. It was so like, your APC, my APC. It's like, what? Like, these guys are not human.
Yeah, I did get to watch some. It was so crazy. And the tournament APC, the other side, like, or not the other side. I mean, Arsene's bizarre.
Oh yeah.
Tournament APC, Arsene's like, what? Tony is insane.
And like, for more context with that, maybe 10 minutes before that match, he was in ITG Grand Finals against Demo. So he was literally playing another game prior to coming up for his SMX match. And that was his first match of the day. So basically, he just warmed up and just APC'd Arsene's Bazaar, like, on command. And like, it's hard to, like, if you don't play the game actively, it's hard to, like, describe how crazy that is just on its own, let alone doing it in a one-shot tournament environment on a setup that's not even yours. That just like really shows how good Water Salad's pads were too.
I considered it quite a controversial decision to use someone's like a non-cabinet setup, but apparently people were quite happy with it, and so that actually gives me a lot of confidence in future tournaments, saying no, we can run on one of these setups. We can run an official StepManiaX tournament without a compact cab or Dedicab or DX cab. It can just be a monitor stage combo, and people are not going to complain if the distance and the height are good. They don't care.
Yeah, I could speak
more
to that before that.
The most important thing would be to have a good like audio, just like good speakers or whatever.
Yep.
Yeah, that's all that really matters
that,
besides the cab. So it's just so standardized. You can use as long as the pads are as they should be. You're good.
Yep. Real quick, I need to shout out Grady for 3rd place and Jimbo SMX for 4th place, which for a lot of people in the old school community, Jimbo was like a name that they were surprised to see. Jimbo had not been in a tournament in over 5 years, but he was one of the originators of card draw format back in the day, back in like 2012 or so. So it's really cool talking to Jimbo about like his experiences running Fort Rapids and other events back in the day. But anyways, back to the question you just asked about like the different setups. So we had a Dedicab setup, and we had Water Salad's home setup. And we opted to use Kevin's setup just because the cave setup is used at conventions and in a public location. So it has a lot more traffic compared to like a home cabinet. And then I was also up at Water Salad's place in June for our little How We Win event, the Salad Bowl. So that one was very well play tested by multiple different play styles. The quality vouches for itself. Dante wakes up 11 in the morning, gets one on Monolith, like first thing in the morning. So like the pads are really good. And then for the Ks, because the C is so much more usage, it was a little bit less sensitive in comparison to the water salads pads. So we ran with both machines on Friday to get through the pools, and then we did all of top 16 Saturday on one cabin only. And our main decisions about that was just to make sure everyone in that at that point in the tournament had a consistent playing field. And then also, like with the schedule that we were given, we had Friday evening and Saturday afternoon to finish our whole tournament, start to finish. So we kind of mapped out like how many matches we have to play on Friday, and then at what point can we move it down to one machine only. And then with the speakers, a lot of people recommended the Logitech Z333 in particular. That was one Dante recommended to us. I think Senpai uses them, J-Curse uses them. So those ones have a lot of, enthusiastic users reviewing them as well too. So, we've played on them. They're fantastic.
Those are
Everyone
the edifiers.
Yeah, so like everyone that played on the machine had no problem adjusting to the machine. Or at least not that I'm at least as far as I'm aware, everyone had just played really good on them. Pilot, the commentator, got an APC on stop and go in one shot in warm-ups.
Sent by the speakers that you recommend or that you use. That's what.
Yeah, you missed the entire podcast, Senpai. We're done now.
Yeah.
No, you just
Yep.
All right, we can start over.
You missed all of Eclipse East. It happened last week, a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago. When was Eclipse East? It's time is merging
Two weekends ago. Yeah. But with that said, it definitely proves that like as long as you have like standardized hardware, like if every home setup's going to use something like this, that has like low latency speakers, roughly the same distance between the pads to like the stand, which we had the Dedicab to our left, so we just looked over, just kind of like try to match like the size of the platform from the screen to the pads. It felt pretty good. And then that brings me up to something that they did.
I would think like the screen height would be, besides the audio, would be like the secondary thing to pay
screen
attention
height
to.
distance, yeah.
Yeah, what's lucky for us that you could just set it up to the very top of that stand, like that Vivo stand that's really popular, and it works really well. But yeah, pad distance is a really big thing. I remember when Skeeter came to Byte 5, he says he plays with his stages really far back. So like playing on a Dedicab was a big adjustment because they're so much closer. And then my compact cab, my pads are a little bit further back too. My screen's a little bit higher. So like it's always like a slight adjustment whenever I play on like a Dedicab or like someone else's setup. But it's not like a huge adjustment. Meanwhile, as far as I know, I think the DDR and pump cabs at Eclipse, they all had slightly different monitors or like CPUs, so things felt like significantly different between the different setups. I don't play those games at a high enough level to like speak to that, or I didn't try them all, so I don't have anything to weigh on. I just things I've heard in passing from other people. Whereas like with StepManiaX, you can play on like multiple setups, and for the most part, it feels almost like the same. But it's like I said about the provider, the Dedicab, it's just used a lot at conventions and public locations, so it just has high traffic.
Okay, so, gosh, everything that goes into a tournament is insane. Like the amount of organization. You have to line up all your players, like even from a TO's perspective, right? You have to have your rule set. You have to have your players lined up. This is like there's no stream going on. There are no other games going on. You have to get your players lined up. They have to know the rules well enough to play themselves. You have to know them well enough to administer your tournament. You have to get them into their card draws. You have to get those matches rolling. You have to get them on stages and moving in an orderly fashion. You have to report their scores back to them, or get their scores reported and get the results reported and move the tournament along in whatever software you're running it in, whether that's start.gg or a spreadsheet. How do you make it all work? I mean, I know the answer, but how do you make it all work?
My advice to everyone, find a successful event and just basically start there. Like, instead of like reinventing the wheel from scratch. Fortunately for me, I already had previous events I could work off of. So like it gave me like a starting point. Byte 5 was my first point because like I don't know what StepManiaX players were looking for at that time because we didn't have any recent tournaments to go off of, and then the other tournaments that happened before then, like Champions of the Coast, and then the one at Lucky Strikes at I think that's actually Miko's Arcade, that one of the tournaments happened at. There's no like online documentation about it, so like I had no data to go off of from their events or like what sort of feedback. But the things you want to know, your rule set, if you have a successful tournament that you enjoyed playing in and just have a little bit of tweaks to do it, start there. Know what tools you're using. So like in our case, we had StarGG as the bracket management system. And then lucky for us, we have Captain in our community that maintains the DDR Tools app. So if you want to go that direction versus like a pick random sort of format, have someone that knows understands how to use it, or ask somebody how they use it. So at some point I want to do like my own guide of like how I run a tournament, just to give someone a baseline and they can branch off it with their own ideas. And then
project we all have going on.
Check the video description. It might be linked depending on when you're watching this.
I like the advice buried in here. Go volunteer at another big event and see and see how things get run and help out there, and you'll learn a lot about running an event yourself. Because I need more people to volunteer at my events and help run them. Like it's I think at Red October we had a total of 12 people on the volunteer channel, and that was just not enough. We were running threadbare, and it was like just constantly pulling people out, and I'm slotting in positions. I think the only people who ran the whole weekend were like you, Jelly, and Laura spent almost that entire weekend on the TO station. But people got to get swapped out, and we could always use more hands. If you're ever like, how do I run this event? There is somebody happy to show you how. You just have to trade a little bit of helping them, and they are ecstatic to give you that experience. None of us are making money doing this yet. Like we said earlier, we'd all love to get paid to do this at least a little bit, at least on the top end of it. But go help fill any roles you want. You will learn a lot about running the tournament, and be explicit. Say, I want to learn how to run these tournaments, and a person's going to help you be in the roles that help you learn every aspect of it, especially the parts you want to learn, because there are a lot of parts to a good tournament. There's the stream, there's the running the brackets in the tournament itself, there's the outside promotion, there is just going to the event and making it a fun, happy event for the people. There's just all the background technical stuff you don't see. Like in October, Ches spent half that tournament just working on hardware as it like became an issue, so that tournament ran incredibly smoothly. There's always something. Heck, at Eclipse, I know you could have used more people, because I saw the staff turn the lights off, and you guys couldn't turn the lights back on. And so you were doing everything you could to adjust that camera, and there was no good solution to adjusting that camera. And I'm like, oh, I wish I could have been there to just spend half an hour doing as best we could, because you didn't have a good option. You didn't have on-site lighting. You didn't have somebody that could just tap the staff and say, turn these lights back on. We cannot see our players on the streams that we're putting out to the internet. And so you had to have this compromise of like, well, now the stage lights are too bright and everything is a little slideshowy, but the alternative was you couldn't even see them. It was so dark. Having that
additionally to that too,
person.
I had this unique problem, which is like a very first world problem, is that not only was I running the tournament, I was running the stream and also competing in 2 different tournaments and making deep runs in them as well. Yeah, and commentating. So I didn't expect to get far enough for it to be an issue, but it's kind of like the situation that Zom had at Red October, where he was going to commentate more, but he kept winning matches. It's like, oh, I need to focus on actually playing the game. So it's like I said, an extra person definitely would have helped.
And I think you made the correct decisions. Like the stream suffers to keep the tournament rolling if that's what happens. Yeah. And that depends on the tournament. Like one of the luxuries we're going to have in Vegas next year is you don't have to deal with any of that as the TO. You're not hands on any of that. If you're on commentary, it's because you want to be. It's not because you're breaking someone. It's because you wanted to just take a few minutes and enjoy, doing some commentary for Ton. And that's the goal where we want to be. And also it's just nice to separate those things out. Like we're going to be making decisions that we're going to say who goes on stream. And as a TO or as a TA, you're going to have to say, oh gosh, I guess all of Tony's matches go on stream. And if the people who don't get covered from that complain to me, I don't have to worry about them coming to me, Ton. they're going to go and complain to Zephyr, who's at the top of stream production, or TC, who's on stream production right now and is making those calls, because it's going to be much more split up. When you've got to be that one chef doing everything, it's so much harder balance. And I really respect you having to wear all those hats at once. I've done it before, and it's way more stressful to do it that way.
And honestly, like, we had a very small team. Like, comparatively speaking, we had myself, Water Cells, who was the head TO of the event, Laura, MCAT, and Pilot was our commentator. And like, we just ebb and flowed really well with each other. Like, we were very good about filling in for each other as needed. The only parts that were really troublesome was whenever, like, say the DJR Tools app would disconnect from everything. That's the part I didn't really teach everyone in depth. So we just need another person that understands how to reconnect everything, and then we should be good from there. But other than that, like, we were pretty good. Like, nobody felt overworked. Everyone, like, oh, another thing though is we had a split schedule, so we did half a Friday, half a Saturday versus one long, like, 12-hour day like Byte was, So like, I think having the split schedule made it easier for us to not feel the need to rotate people as well.
Mm-hmm. It did feel like your commentators were getting like burnt out, just because it felt like they were like, and here we are on hour 4 of it's Pilot and Primo, and you've been hearing our two voices, and we've been having to talk for 4 hours straight, and we've said this exact same thing about this chart already.
What doesn't help is the commentators were me and Water Salads, who were we both placed 5th place respectively, so we were pretty deep in the tournament ourselves too, so we weren't available to commentate.
Right. Yeah, that's a curse with all tournaments.
It's a first world problem.
A lot of your best commentators are your best tournament performers who, I mean, I remember going around at Red October this year and just like tapping some top players and like, hey, do you want to do a shift on commentary? And the answer is always like, no, I've got a match in half an hour and I really need to focus on being prepared for that. And it's like, yes, that is a very reasonable answer to give me. Yes. You focus on this thing where you could make money by doing better, and also you perform better and you look better on the stream that I'm producing, and it makes everything run smoother. Yes.
Yeah, and then I had other backups, but they were also in other games like DDR or Pump It Up as well. So, that's one of the challenges at a multi-music game event too, is you have everyone that's in multiple tournaments that want to help, but they're busy with other commitments. And then one of the things that Eclipse did really well, in comparison to Byte, and both events went really well, by the way, I feel. Eclipse chose to have us go with the staggered schedule strategy. So they wanted ITG and SMX done at a certain time so that those players would not conflict Pump It Up, DDR, and Dance Rush. ITG finished around 2 p.m. on Saturday. So they started their pools to top 4 Friday. SMX did pools to top 16 on Saturday. So pretty much when Saturday started, we just had top 4 of ITG and then top 16 of SMX, but 12 winners, 4 losers, what we went with. So that's even 4 less matches we have to play. The math I always calculate is every 2 players you have in a tournament adds like half an hour to the tournament. So like some people wonder like, why do I have 36 players, not like an even 40? Adding 4 more players is an extra hour of runtime to factor in, and that doesn't even consider like any random like bottlenecks from them in other events, or like because it starts on a Friday, they're still traveling to the venue, which when you were at Byte, you saw that both Laura and I had trouble getting to the venue on time because of flight delays.
I need to interrupt in there because we've been circling around this concept of multi-game events are really hard to deal with for a bunch of reasons. One, you're spreading your volunteers out because a lot of people want to volunteer for multiple games. But also, yes, your players are in this game and that game and that game. And not only does that affect your players' availability, but it affects you all the way back to when you're writing the rules for your tournament. At Red October, we can do silly things like have a pool where everyone round robins and say, okay, everyone in this pool is available right now. We have them. We know we have them. And they can just stay here. Whereas other tournaments, they might have all of their tournaments running at once where you cannot have this player just sitting here, because generally a lot of tournaments have their same levels of players running at approximately the same time and stopping each other. So you want more of the kinds of formats we've been seeing lately. The most common one being the kind you used at Byte and the kind we used at Eclipse. Or we used it the other way. We used it at Byte and you used it at Eclipse, where you've got pools feeding into a larger top 16, those are really efficient. Something like a waterfall, which is what we want to use going forward for a lot of tournaments, can have this really negative effect if you have all the players on the same tier trying to play at the same time on every 4 games at an event.
Yep.
That can really grind the entire event to a halt. Now there are ways around that. You schedule, you say DDR starts 2 hours before Pump, starts 2 hours before SMX, starts 2 hours before ITG. But those are all considerations to make. Gosh, can you speak more to that, or did I bundle it up well?
Yeah, it bundles up well. What worked for us, and the reason it worked for us is because ITG and SMX were both expected to have lower entrant counts, so it made sense for them to play on Friday. Especially with DDR in particular, you'll have a lot of overlap with ITG, SMX, and DDR because they're all the most similar to each other. Compared to SMX and Pump, you don't have a lot of overlap with that in comparison. So having no DDR matches on Friday at all meant the SMX and ITG players were able to work together to hey, I need this person for the next 20 minutes, and then unblock my whole tournament. It's cool, I'll take these players and just run them concurrently. The level of communication we had with each other, because a lot of the people that were on staff at Eclipse were also at Byte as well, so we were all aware of the problems we ran into at Byte, and we tried to solve them ahead of time with a more efficient scheduling system. And I had some reservations about it at first myself too, but with us finishing the SMX tournament on Saturday by 5 p.m., because our group photo says 4:57 p.m., we looked it up. We were able to give the women's tournament a really good time slot that was not rushed. So that's one of the things that we got out of it. So we had to finish the wild tournament faster, but in exchange we gave the women's tournament a dedicated spot. They could run a format that wasn't hey, we're just running this format just to get it done.
Yeah. Gosh.
Then also, sorry, I have more to say. And then for all the other games, they don't have to be, for the players themselves, like Tony, who were in multiple games, once he was done with ITG, that was it. He didn't have to worry about going back and forth. And then once SMX is done, he could focus on his next game without having to go back between 3 different games at the same time, like he did at Byte.
Okay, now going in, I kind of previewed us into this. I kind of set this up. We've talked about different ways tournaments can form, and before, Red October was kind of it was a legacy off of last year's Red October format, which was just let's all make the players play a bunch because we have lots of stages and we have lots of time to let them play, and we just want to get a lot of matches in, and then settle out your top 8, your top 16. And then go to the real elimination rounds from there. But other older tournaments with more going on, more other games going on, and maybe they only have 1 or 2 stages for the same or larger number of players. You've been running this format a lot where you've got say 1 or 2 pools that feed into a top 16. I remember seeing that at first and hating it because I thought wait a second, these guys just get to be seated top and they don't have to do anything, whereas everyone else here has to fight it out in the dregs and we have to claw our way to the top. And then I played it and I loved it, and I ran it and I loved it, and I said, okay, this is a good start, and it really feels like a step towards waterfall, which is where a lot of tournaments are moving. Can you speak to why that tournament style got selected? Is it basically to make the close matches and to keep those top players from having to constantly being called upon? Is that the major motivation?
Yeah, so this idea was actually first brought up in a rhythm game organizers group years ago by I Am Chris for Life about quote unquote meaningless matches early on where you need to get your top seed at 10 in the morning and then you don't need them till way later in the day. So the biggest thing we try to solve with that, which it's still an issue but it's not as apparent, is the seed disparity, which is the biggest problem that people have with double elimination is it creates what you call uninteresting matches because the advantage you give to the higher seeds by giving them easier matchups. That's one of the big criticisms with the double elimination, where a lot of the results can feel predictable when you have our first match of the day was Tommy versus Jacqueline, which that one went the way we expected it. So it's kind of we still have problems to solve in that space, but once you got to the top 16 and the seeded players played, you can see the visible difference in ability that those players have compared to everyone that played in pools for the most part. So it just would not have been a very good experience to have those players in the pool as well.
I would compare the
And-
pools to being like almost like you have two different divisions and you can graduate from that lower
Yes.
division to the upper division. And the qualifiers just place you in one of those divisions. And I
Yep.
actually really prefer that to what we did at Red October. And that's why we're changing what we did to something else. And that's why you're writing the rules, Jelly.
Yeah, and something we talked about internally after the event is that we actually could probably split up to like a third tier too, where we have like all the people that went 0-2 should be in their own bracket to meet like a middle tier that meet up like what was our top 8 seeded players. So that's how I feel like we can go that direction where we can segment it further. We weren't sure about the entrant count at the time, so like one of the challenges you face around October is like how many people are going to show up to my event, and having to plan around that.
Yeah, how many people are going to show up to my event is a tough one. The reason Red October wasn't Waterfall in 2023 was we didn't know 40 people were going to show up. We knew 30 people were going to show up, but that's cutting it really close. And what if only 25 people showed up? It's really tough to make a Waterfall tournament of that with the kind of concept we want to make. Whereas this pool system, like, hey, let's go over to BHOP Ball. They had a pools into, well, even Eclipse was slightly smaller than Bite, but used the same concept of we're going to feed a lower pool into that top 16.
Yep. And then B-Hop Ball, they did 4 pools round robin into a top 8. So like, it's kind of like you said, you have a lot more matches for the players to play. My main criticism about round robin in general is you end up in situations where like you have matches that have zero impact on the results of the pool.
You know, this person is going to win this no matter what, 100% of the time. Why are we even playing this match? And the reason was, in the case of Red October, was to give the player who's going to lose it a chance to play. But there are better ways to do that. There are better ways to run that tournament, and there are better formats for it.
And like, just speaking as a player, like if my match doesn't mean anything, I'm not going to put any effort into it. You know, like I have no value or no real value or nothing to gain from playing that match with my full effort. You know, if it doesn't, the only thing I could do at that point is change someone else's results versus my own.
Right. If I'm playing against Tony, neither of us is really giving it our all because I know he's going to win and he knows he's going to win no matter
like if they're guaranteed top 2.
Right.
Not that it's a bad format. It's just like that's one of the things you look out for. Like you get to play more, but then you end up with matches that are. It could be the time could be used better elsewhere. Is the way I see it.
I think round robin is really good for like those small local tournaments.
Hey, Word, like do we have some of these images we can bring up on the screen?
Say that again.
Round robin is great for smaller formats. Do we have some of these images we have? Did we prep these or did we? I know we came into this episode super unprepared because the point is to do less work. Last month was the burnout episode and we're still burnt out.
I can put something up, but I don't know what you're referring to.
Jelly, did we have one that was the format that we used at either Clips or
I posted bracket links, but not any graphics. So if you want to start with that,
is it visually obvious on there? We can show like what that looks like.
I feel like it's visually obvious.
I want to compare and contrast. I was going to have a whiteboard for Waterfall, but I can't find my dry erase markers. There's a whiteboard right here, but my dry erase markers are all missing.
And then the thing about Waterfall that I like in particular is that it gives you close matches for all the players. But the part that I've heard in passing, the feedback you get is like, you only get that one round and that's it. So like, Pump It Up at Eclipse piloted a double elimination Waterfall format in their lower division, which I think went fantastic. And it's like what I want to work towards for future events too.
So let's solve some of these right here on this podcast. Let's solve some of these criticisms. So, okay. To demonstrate what these differences are. So a bracket pools into a top 16 is like, for example, you have a pool of 16 players. They're your lower seeded. They're like equivalent to your lower division. And you run them in a traditional double elimination bracket and you don't play like the last couple matches of the finals. You just say the losers are still around and the winners are still around. The last 2 winners and the last 2 losers are still around. And those go straight into winners and losers of a top 16 that is pre-seeded. There's 12 players that were so good when they seeded into this tournament, when they ranked everyone in, that they said, okay, these guys just automatically get slots reserved for them because it's a waste to play these players against everyone else for the reasons we listed earlier. You know, they're going to be following neck with all the other games that they're going to be playing in if it's a multi-game event. And it's also silly to have these players play against the people in that lower division.
Yeah, there we go. We got a bracket there.
Here's an example of one that
Oh,
ran.
it's not live
is that
yet.
right?
It's only on the preview.
That's not super clear on what it looks
Yeah,
like.
That's a top 16 bracket. Can you switch it to one that's like pool?
Yeah.
People on
And so-
stream can't see this, FYI.
Okay, yeah, that's what it feeds into. We'll just describe it verbally and be a little sad that we don't have a beautiful whiteboard to draw this all out on.
If I share my screen, can y'all see it?
Yes. We
think
can blow
so.
your screen up. We have the technology.
Yeah,
Okay.
let's just do that.
Okay. All right, I'm sharing my screen right now. Can everyone see this? I feel like I'm at work right now.
Yes, we can all see that.
I cannot.
Can you zoom in a little more?
It's not on the stream. Hold on.
Oh, I can see. Oh, you have to bring it into the stream.
Oh, I have to do that.
Yeah, we can see it, but the stream can't see
Copy
it.
screen
We're doing
share
this
slot.
live.
Oh, I just got to add another browser source. That's easy.
Remember, everyone, when we started this new format on the podcast, one of the reasons was so it was less work and less prep time for us. So we're figuring this out right now.
What's your screen resolution?
I
1080?
don't know. Probably.
So yeah, conceptually, you have like imagine 16s, and you could have two pools of 16, and each of them sends 2 and 2 up. That's what happened at Byte, I believe. So you had 8 players going in, and there were 8 or 12 players prearranged. So it was actually a top 20, but we called it top 16. Am I getting that correct?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's correct. But let's talk about the Eclipse one because it ran into like a proper top 16.
Okay.
Okay, hang on. It's not on stream yet. Just give me a second.
Okay, and I can zoom in more if we need to zoom in more.
Oh yeah, I'm looking really close at my monitor here.
I think that's as far as I can zoom in.
Zoom, enhance.
Yeah, just let me know if I need to like crop differently. Just let me know.
I'd say you can crop the left side that has like the navigation stuff.
Right. Yeah.
How's that?
Stream can see us. So yeah, as you can see, that's like how it starts out at the. That is just one pool, or is that 2 pools?
This is one pool. There's 2 pools that look exactly the
that's
same.
winners and losers. And so winners bracket
we had 28 players in pool, so we have 2 pools of 14 because we were capped at 36. But yeah, so first let's back up. Double elimination bracket, I'm sure most people know, but for those who don't, you have head-to-head matchups, and you have to lose twice speed out of the tournament. Every match is a best of 3. And then normally, I'm going to highlight here K and L. The winners of these would normally play against each other, and then you eventually resolve the whole tournament that way. In this format, everyone who makes it to this point, the winner of this point, is the winner of the pool, or they get out to top 16 either to winner side or loser side, and that will feed into the top 16 here. So you have 8 players directly seeded. Seeds 1 through 4 start off in winners round 2. Seeds 5 through 8 start off in winners round 1. They meet the winners of both pools, and then the losers.
So that's another layer of like the best players get a little bit of a boost, so we're not wasting time running matches that don't really matter.
That's one way to phrase it. I'd phrase
Or
it a
it's a
little bit
reward
differently.
for the best players for performing the best in seeding. You can say like in Red October, we seeded top based off of who APC'd the songs first, because we just said, you know what? We want people to report their scores and tell us that they're a top player coming first so we can account for them. And like, that's sort of your reward. You get seeded slightly higher by reporting your scores to us sooner.
Yeah, we went with the leaderboard positioning because we feel like that's at that point in the leaderboard, it feels like a very accurate measurement to use for like the top, like, within the top 20 or so. Once you get to like from like say like if the gap between the next seeded players are like say 23 to like 55, that's when there's like a big drop off where we don't want to go down that far in the leaderboards unless everyone's just that close to each other. But yeah, we did the top 8. We did top leaderboard positioning for tiebreakers over time of submission because some people can't commit to the tournament early, but you have someone like Spencer who's like, he was literally the winner of Byte, but he couldn't finalize his travel plan so much later, for example. But yeah. Right. And then just one more thing to add to this is like the winners of the losers bracket are the ones who meet the losers of winners round 1. So that's one reason why I have people advance the losers bracket as well. Pump It Up did only 12 players only, so they had the same thing without a losers round. And the big issue with that we identified at the tournament is whoever wins whoever gets to winners round 2 but loses, they're meeting whoever was 0-1 with a 1-1 record. So like you're not playing against a player with the same match record as you. And that's usually what you see in like double elimination or like Swiss tournament formats is you play against other players who have the same match score as you. So like the people meeting in this point of the tournament that are both 2-0, for example, whereas the people meeting down this point are both 2-1, meaning like they've won 2, lost 1, or won 2, lost 0. So that's pretty much like everything should be even is like the way I think about it.
That seems like it helps match up people that are the most similar in skill to make the best like matches to spectate as well.
Yeah. And then one of the things we did identify were like we had all these like 2-0 stomps early on. That's what we talked about, like segmenting this even further to like a third set of players. So all these 0-2 players should be against each other. So like Big Matt and Jacqueline or Goddish and Dims, for example, should match up with each other earlier so that they can have potentially more competitive matches with each other.
Right.
But
hey,
some of these 2-0s though don't really tell you the full story. We had I'm gonna just pull up a different match. I think ATB and Pac Rob was 1-2, but the 1-2 was down to like a sub window, you know, so you don't see that in the match results as well. Or
right.
like the snowstorm and pilot match is a 2-0, but it was literally I think a 2 perfect difference in one of the songs.
In my opinion, the resolution of a match outcome is just who won. Like if
Yes.
you do it something like how we did the round robin at Red October, you can have, you know, a trinary outcome, you know, you won 0, 1, or 2 songs. But to me, like when it comes to there's a winner or a loser, that's all you report because you really don't know what happened internally within that match. From like we are examining this from like an information studies perspective where we're really trying to analyze who is the better player. I don't think you get get meaningful information by saying this round went 2-1 between these 2 players and this round went 2-0. So put the 2-1, you know, put the people who went 1-2 in losers against the people who also went 1-2 versus, and then keep the people who went 0-2 against each other. I don't consider that very meaningful, but it's not a terrible tiebreaker. Like if you're going to tiebreak, that's probably one of the best things to do it over.
Yeah, and then another thing to consider too is just because their tournament results aren't good doesn't mean they're not a good player. You know, there's a lot of different variables that affect a player's result. I mentioned in Twitter.
Sick.
No, bracket luck is a big part of it too. Like sometimes you get a lucky bracket, or you have like a really good draw. You know, like that's another part about a card draw that you have to look out for. Is like being prepared for everything is really a big part of it. And in my match against Spencer in particular, I had probably one of the worst draws I could have possibly had against him in my entire life for this 5th place match. He should have won anyways, but like it was just everything I was bad at in one draw again. I was like, come on. Which means for me as a player, if I want to do better, I need to work on this specific skill set.
And as a tournament organizer and as an audience, you don't necessarily want completely deterministic outcomes. Sometimes you want the draw to give you something where it's not like, oh, Tony's going to win every tournament, or Dante's going to win in every tournament, or Chris for Life's going to win in every tournament. Sometimes you want different strengths of different players to come out, sometimes for them to be able to capitalize on their strengths and make choices where they were able to capitalize on their strengths to then perform that well and have an unexpected outcome, or just the less expected outcome, because that's what makes a good tournament, right? Like as both a player and an organizer, you want somebody to be able to show up and do their best and do what wasn't exactly like. We've had so many StepManiaX tournaments where, including ones I run, where you're like, yeah, that's, you look at the start.gg, the little graph, not graph, the block, the spreadsheet, and it shows like who won and who's, you know, you got the bottom left and the top right, and the top right's all green and the bottom left's all red. And you're like, yeah, it's all expected outcomes. You can probably bring one up there for a pool for a different event. those are kind of boring. Like that's what we want to get away from with these other formats. Seating is important, and your format is important. I wanted to bring up the seating because we've been doing seating traditionally in dance games with qualifiers, and lately with ranking. Some tournaments do manual seating where they just say we know this
Yep.
this player is this good. We'll look at their past performance at other tournaments and slot them in manually here. I really like the leaderboard for your top fours, top eights, depending on the size of the tournament.
Yep.
But what we
And
want to
also,
do,
and also who's in attendance as well too really matters a lot.
yeah, right, yeah, what you make these decisions on is based on the tournament. You can make some one size fits all like guidelines, but you can never make a hard rule. What we want to do for Red October going forward, we can do because we have a sort of expected. We now have uh, this steady momentum that we've been carrying forward, and now we know we can say like, hey, here's this new system we're going to do. We're going to nix qualifiers. We're going to say there are no qualifiers. There are no go by the leaderboard because we don't want a Chad situation where DDR Chad had to drive a 5-hour road trip to grind up his entire leaderboard situation twice.
Well,
one
and
was
then
for Red October.
going just by leaderboard, like that plays to the strength of people that grind a song over and over. Whereas in a tournament, you only get one chance at a song. So those can be like really different kind of players. A lot of times
and you're never going to get perfect.
there's a lot of times there's a lot of overlap with people that can do well doing a one shot and also grind for their high scores. But I think those should be considered separately in some aspect.
Tan, you can speak to this, but like as an organizer, what I want is my players to have to do the least work and to just be able to like play the game. So leaderboard is good. If you're already grinding the leaderboard and that's what you do, that's better than qualifiers. That's better than grinding qualifiers. The leaderboard system was better. But like qualifiers, like they're a better system than, I don't know, on-site qualifiers where you have to rush to the venue and get there. Like online qualifiers are good, but they have this downside of you're incentivized to grind. If you're a private owner, you can do better. If you have more time, you can do better.
Well, that is just going, in my opinion, going by like set qualifier songs, you get into the what we talked about earlier, where it's like kind of the luck of the draw on what songs are drawn, and that might not necessarily be the best way to tell who's the better player. It's like you're just seeing who's the better player at those specific songs.
Yeah. What we plan on doing in Vegas next year is we're just going to take everyone who's in the tournament and just start comparing their scores against each other. And we're going to settle out a ranking system. That's the intent. We might not make it, but that is like currently the plan. And it's either going to be an ELO rank system that is based off of like, okay, we're going to take your existing scores on the leaderboard and say, this only works if everyone's public. But everything we're doing next year in Vegas means you're going to have a public profile because that's also how we're going to read your scores.
I do have some feedback towards that though, because like,
oh yeah, sure, we'll do it live.
Yeah, just like think about the ELO ranking system. We talked about this briefly. Like you'd have to have a way to filter out like the difficulties are not being used. So like for Red October, we started at 21s, for example. So like you want to make sure like whoever's not playing the 20s and 19s that is filtered out, because you have people like me who have like really sus scores on 19s and 20s just because I don't play them.
Oh, we're right. So the current scheme right now, the current top candidate scheme, and this might not be our scheme, and this is the one that Ry Derrick came up with, is it basically looks at like the top scores you can 99, and it says, okay, what can this person 99? If they can 99 a bunch of 25s, they're on that strata, and then players that can 99 24s, they're on the next strata down, and then players that can 99 23s. Eventually this slides down to what you can 98, and eventually it slides down to what you can 97 and 96, and that's all stuff we have to argue. But basically it's a way of saying like, okay, these are the players that can like really hit this mark on these songs, and they're going to be in this part, and they're going to be ranked based off of that. And then when it goes to, go ahead.
We're at a point too, you have to consider the hex stars as well too. Like the gap between a hex star and a 99 is significant enough that you also want to consider that milestone as well too.
Right. We might have to, we might not have to. It depends on who signs up. Like we might just be able to say, okay, everyone who can 99 of all the 25s and up, or most of the 25s and up, these are our, these are the top 16 candidates, and we just like manually seat them because that's few enough to where we do.
Yeah.
But then
Now,
everyone
one
below
issue with
that,
that too, though, is when you see them that way, but you don't have 25s appear in the draw until later stages of the tournament, which is like one of the
well,
criticisms we got at Eclipse were like the tournament was scaling not quick enough, whereas I had one where we're scaling too fast. It's like now we got to find the right balance of people are getting better, so like now it's okay for us to like raise the difficulty a bit.
maybe it's time to introduce edits into major StepManiaX tournaments because we need more charts.
That's a no for me personally, but if other people want to do it, all good.
Okay, so my opinion on putting the edits in is the Step Revolution needs to add some functionality in the app to let us have like a collection, like how
like a pack,
like the Winter Groove has a pack. You can just download that pack and you can just play all the songs, and those are all the songs that are going to be in the tournament. But
and it's
we
sort
need
by
something,
pack option.
yeah, we need something like that before I think it would be wise to put edits into tournaments.
Because otherwise you're grinding the tournament to a halt on speed. If you're saying, okay, every person in this tournament has to have all of these bookmarked, it gets a lot harder when there's no way to say like, okay, just have this pack and know that if you're going to be playing anything 23 up, these might show up and you have to have these on your account.
I liked what McLeodchick said. He brought up how ITL does their qualifier rankings. Is like whatever out of however many 100 songs there is in the pack, whatever X number of songs, like in their case it was 15, whatever 15 songs that each player has the highest like rank score, that's kind of how you're ranked. You add up those 15. So he said
very
like
similar to what Derek wanted to do.
Yeah, he said for like someone like Chris or Nick, they can just APC like all the top hardest songs and they get the highest rank points, and then they don't even have to play any other of the lower songs to qualify or to get their,
and that's what we're going for. The goal
ranking.
is to tell players, just play the game and we have an algorithm that will rank you, and we can explain the algorithm to you and we can give you the math to it, but and we can tell you how to do better, and rank yourself better. But the goal is to basically eliminate qualifiers. That's the goal, and we're not 100% sure we're going to do it, but we're gonna try.
Yeah, and then something I need to share too is like we're talking a lot about like the top end of the players. We can't forget that like you need the lower level and like the mid level players to exist as well to make the tournament successful and also to grow the community. We don't want the tournaments to feel inaccessible to those players as well. These are players we want to come out and we want them to grow with us too. That's a really important part for me with my tournament formats, where I want everyone to feel welcome, not just the top players only.
What a great introduction to Waterfall. Hey, I've been describing this structure for a lot. Can I be the one that describes what Waterfall is, since I've done this so many times? Okay, take another number of players. It can be 4, it can be 6, it can be 8. We're going to call it 8. Take 8 players. Like put them on a line. I was going to have a whiteboard to do this. Make them fight. Some way make them fight. You can have them all in a heat and they all play the same like 4 or 6 or 8 songs that they all select together, or out of a draw, each of them brings a song. Or you can have them run a double elimination tournament of just those 8 people, and you take the top 2 winners, but you make all 8 of those players fight. And then 1 or 2 of them advances. So like only 1 or 2 of those guys make it out. And it goes ahead. Like, so we described those pools earlier of those, pools of 16 or 14 where 2 or 4 advance up. You've got this pool of 8 where we'll say 2 are advancing. You go to the next pull up where there were 6 people already seated. Those were the people that scored better in either your qualifiers or did better in your ranking system or were higher up in the leaderboard system, however you're organizing the seeds in the tournament. Now you have 8 players again because you had 2 advance. Make them fight. And then 2 more advance. And you go up again and you make them fight. And you do this 5 to 7 times to have a really high granularity of difference between players. So you basically have 5 to 7 divisions of skill that you have in this game. And this can keep scaling up because you don't just have to keep going taller. You don't have to just have more up and up and up. You can start adding these in parallel. Once you have more than 40 or 50 players, you say, well, that's ridiculous. You can't have somebody climb all the way up like 10 different pools. That's that's just unreasonable to expect somebody to go all the way from the bottom. Even though we know that's not going to happen, we know the worst, the lowest seeded players aren't going to be capable of making it up to that top 16. You want it to be possible. You want it to be a reasonable thing to say, like, this person can play. So you say, okay, we're going to run 2 of this waterfall next to each other. We're going to run 2 strands or falls or streams, chains, whatever you call them. And at the end, they're just going to connect together at your top 16. Each of them is going to send 2 or 4 into your top 16 at the end. And you can have as many of those next to each other as you want. Realistically, for most tournaments you see in dance games, that's 2 to 4 in parallel. And in smaller tournaments, like at Red October last year, it would have just been 1. You would have had 40 players, and that would have been about 5 or 6 levels. And it would have ran fantastically. But the upside to that is all of these players are in a really condensed, skill levels are all right next to each other. So all those matches are really close. They feel really good about the matches they play because they say, like, oh, I could have won that, or I barely won that. And then they move up. The downsides to that, of course, are you feel like you might be in like the like, oh, I'm in the dregs division. But you kind of feel like that when you go 0-2 or 0-3 or 0-4 in a tournament anyway. And it feels a lot better for your matches to be close, no matter what they are. Now that make them fight, there's lots of ways to do that. You can, I'm going with double elimination, make them fight. Like, have a round within that 8 and make it a mini tournament. That way it gives everyone that 1v1. But there are so many ways to do it that are so interesting. And that's almost a podcast on its own.
Yeah, I like how that sounds.
Oh, Jelly, you're muted.
I didn't.
Or at least Word muted him.
No, I muted on the mixer. I have a visual to share with everybody then. That cut my
and
time
this
in
gets
that.
more complicated. You can do stuff like you can turn this into double elimination. This can get more complicated and more interesting. Yes, this is a standard. And this is a schedule with it too.
Oh yeah, this is so for the Big Deal 4, Pump It Up. We're working on trying to figure out like a two pool double elimination waterfall that kind of progresses into like basically you have 11 seeded players and then everyone else plays and then they promote into like that top 12 like pro division bracket. So like you start with 4 players and then 1 advances each one to turn into 4. Eventually
So
they
take
meet
those
up
numbers
at
I
some
had
point.
and cut them in half.
Yeah, basically, this is one that accounts for 77 players, by the way. Like, it's a lot of players, but this is the layout we have for. This is one example of how waterfall can be run. This is not how other tournaments have always done it, but this is just one system that has not debuted yet.
So you have like the times and everything pretty much set up.
Yeah.
Yeah, having that scheduled is really like, it's a double-edged sword. It's really great to like know what your time points are. It's really scary when you start falling behind and somebody else is expecting you to be on the schedule, and including your players. If your players are saying like, "Hey, I was gonna go to, I have a show after this that I was gonna go to. I'm in a town I don't live in, and I was gonna do a tourist thing. Can we move it along here, please?"
The hardest thing about waterfall is when that player promotes and they're continuously needed and they're promoting in multiple events.
Right. Yeah, that player who's just unexpectedly placed low in the seeding in multiple games, and then they're suddenly you need them everywhere.
Yep.
I've seen double elimination waterfall is one of those things where I always think find a way to incorporate that double elimination into the individual pools, or you need it because otherwise it feels like you're just out so fast. That's one of the downsides to waterfall is, especially in this, it says it's 3 songs. Now, that's 3 songs, and then you play 3 songs again. So that's not actually bad because it means you get 6 songs in the tournament. That's a pretty good minimum number of songs for a player to feel like, I've gotten to participate. Yeah, this is a great graphic.
Yeah, and then one of the things that like we talked about with waterfall is like you want the players who lose to have a way to meet up with each other. So like in this bottom quadrant here, like everyone that loses in pool 1 and pool 1A, pool 1B do meet each other at some point. Whereas like in your traditional like double elimination bracket, those 0-2 players pretty much never get to see each other after the first round.
Yeah, and one of the things you have to look out for in some systems is where you're just playing that same player who just beat you again. It's another thing to avoid.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
for like there's some shuffling done around. Like if I sent this graphic somewhere where everyone can see it more closely, we swap them around just so that you have like different opponents available. I'll post this
Right.
in the Discord.
The ultimate version of this has an extra strand so that people are constantly like piling over each other, braiding over each other, and like mixing around each other through losers divisions or losers pools, so that they never end up in the same losers pool with anyone who they just played in a winners pool. So that it's never feels like,
Wet
oh
pee.
well, I was third place in this pool, and two people and one person advanced, and I'm with the second person who was also a god who now advances, and I feel just completely shut out, even though I am good enough that I could have in a normal pool advanced. But I just got
double
placed with
jeopardy
these
is always
other
going to be a thing too.
Yeah.
Like in any format, double jeopardy happens. Like for me, for my case at Red October, I had Grady in my pool, but because of my match record, I ended up in the seed that had Grady on my side of the bracket as well. So it's like I played him in pools already, and now I have to play him again in like the top 16 bracket as well. Which we couldn't avoid that. So that's just how seeding works.
Right. Hey, I realized we got ahead of ourselves. We didn't talk about BHOP ball at all, did we?
B-Hop ball.
That was,
Yes, I watched quite a bit of that too because MCAT and Hints were there. MCAT helped me with helped me and Water Salads and Laura with Eclipse quite a bunch, and she also ran the women's tournament too, while participating in all the women's tournaments available at Eclipse. I don't think anyone had a higher tournament count than she did that whole weekend.
just enter all of them.
Yeah, so B-Hop Ball was in, I think, Vernon Hills, Illinois, like in the Illinois area inside the B-Hop Esports Mall. That one was hosted by Psychedelic. Twans was the TO of that tournament, and the top four finishers were Hints, MCAT, Gooba Roomba, and Twans. And something really important to know is Gooba Roomba is only 16. So it's really impressive for him to be playing at that level at his age.
He's
And,
been playing for like a year-ish.
Yeah, like it's just like the amount of content available for players to like grow at an accelerated rate. It's just like crazy because like when I was 16, I was nowhere near that good myself. I was like getting C's on max 300 or something like that, you know. Like it's just like really amazing to see how like good younger players are getting these days.
Yeah, I think at that age I couldn't pass the max. Well, 16, I hadn't discovered dance schemes yet. So yes, I think he wins by default there.
I think access to the games, like not just StepManiaX, just all games, it's a lot better in this era.
Yeah, and you have to
Access to
consider too,
knowledge,
like
too.
the pads back then were not as good. Like people weren't modding the pads like this back in like the early 2000s, you know. And like the StepManiaX pads, like out of the box, for the most part, they work really well. Like my personal stages are not modded in any way at all, and they work perfectly fine. Water Solids pads were not modded, and then some people do
removed
run
my
into like
modding.
issues.
My modding just
Yeah.
made it more complicated to figure out if it's like my form, like if it's just like a skill issue or if I modded it too much or whatever. I just took out the tape and everything.
Yeah, and like I
just
always
play
highly
on low.
recommend McCloud's video. If you have like the delayed release issue, that one's like a legitimate concern to watch out for, which is a very easy fix with Painter's tape. And same with like under sensitivity, Painter's tape under the sensor, good to go.
I have one arrow that I still have some for that, but that's all.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
I think that's about all. That's about B-Hop Ball. That one had 4 tournaments as well. They had ITG, which Hints also got second place in, which is really cool. DDR Extreme and Pump It Up as well. So they also had a multi-music game event there as well that they ran over 2 days.
All right, so
Okay.
next year, people have, what do they have to look out for? They have waterfall to look out for. There's going to be a lot of waterfall tournaments, at least if we get our say, as these tournaments get larger and more stable. Stable is kind of the word I'm looking for. Like you have to have an expected like number of people sign up, or it gets kind of tough to account for, it gets hard to prepare. Larger events with multiple games, that's easier, but then you get those scheduling concerns where sometimes that pools of 16 into a top 16 are easier.
I think what people have to look out for is they might have to start planning around playing on Friday for like these bigger events, because like realistically, there's not enough time to all run all in just a single day like we did in the past. Because like events are growing.
Right.
At least not without compromising the format significantly. Like historically, like the DDR tournaments had over 100 players. We had one song matches, which doesn't feel too good, but we understand as players why it has a run that way.
Expect some tournaments with larger machine counts. In Las Vegas, we had 2 tournaments on competition for Red October because we could get away with that few. We could have brought 4 into the venue if we really, really needed to. And we still can. And we can bring in 6. Now that I know home stages are okay, this one's in really good shape. It is tournament ready. I could whip up 6 machines at a Vegas tournament in an instant with the people who are willing to volunteer their stages to a larger event.
Yep.
You can look forward to, at least in Vegas, I don't know about all over, but we're trying to develop the tools for everyone in the community to use to have more automated match reporting tools. Instead of your TO having to manually record the match and drop it in to your software, the goal is, hey, there's the score feed coming out. It shows the player and it shows the song. We already know the song's coming up from DDR.tools. So why don't we just have our software suite say, oh, hey, we can report this match based off of the songs those players just played. And then we can always override that as a TO. But as an automated system, that makes everything run faster, smoother. It makes for a better broadcast, and it makes for a faster, more efficient tournament that everyone's having a better time in. And we can just make it bigger and grander. And that's what I'm pushing forward, like super hard this whole way.
This has already started being talked about, and Pump It Up literally finished debuting this at Eclipse, like the week of Eclipse. Murloc finished this up. He has a tool that shows you the draw and like the match results, like on a Discord bot. It's crazy what he did for this. Like this shows like what draw complete and then results here.
Yes, that's one of the things that's one of the things I'm pushing for outside of tournaments that I just started bringing up with people. All of these tools we've been talking about for tournaments, you can do this for an online event. It can be a tournament, it can be a league. You can have a bot that runs a tournament at this point, almost
like
hands off from its TO, other than having to come in and correct things or make rulings. But ideally, you can make these things so much more automated that fewer people can run them, and we can do more of them. So more of your play can be competitive if you want it to be. If you want more of your practice to just be this casual competitive, say you want to enter a league, maybe in 2025 we'll have this set up where you can enter some kind of online league where you're playing no bar or you're playing full, and it automatically sets you up against a new opponent every few days or every week, and you draw a hand together, and it's done by a Discord bot, and you don't have to report it back to a TO because the bot sees your scores when you play these songs next and compares them against your opponent, and then puts that into the system and gives your opponent next round. That's kind of the direction we want to go. Whether we see that in 2024, maybe that's a pipe dream no one ever puts the effort into, because that's a lot of work to make. But yeah, that's what we as organizers want to make. That's the kind of fun we have is making these kinds of things so that you all can have a blast playing that way. And so we can have a blast playing that way. That's
it makes it easier on both sides, both as a competitor and as the organizer for like bridging communications. The downside is if your internet's not good, then you have issues, but we're trying.
Yes, we are very first world. We definitely, all of the stuff we do, especially in SMX, right? We very much cater to people who have access, right? Like home machine users kind of have an advantage over everyone else. People who can afford to travel have an advantage of everyone else just by nature of being able to make it to more events and meet more people and network and socialize more.
Yeah, they definitely have an advantage, but it's a lot different than something like DDR, where even if you have money, even if you wanted to buy a machine, you can't. Where these are all literally anyone can buy them. There's no restrictions on. So the only thing preventing you from being a machine owner is yourself.
Right. The only thing StepRev could do to make it
that
more
whole
accessible.
that money thing,
Yeah. The only thing
But-
StepRev could do to make it more accessible would be to make a lower quality stage that would split their market up, and make a home version that would split their market up and give them a larger development team and make the game more complicated and harder for them to make. Like
Then
they've
they've already said they're never
going
gonna
to
do that.
Yeah,
Yep.
right.
Although-
They don't have a lot of options and they all kind of suck.
Although, really quick, I want to chime in and say that you don't have to have a machine at home to be a high-level player either. Grady, before he has his home setup, was top-ranked. DDR Chad doesn't have home access. He's number 3 in the wild leaderboard right now. Squid, number 7, doesn't have home access. So like, it's a lot harder, but it's still possible. This is what I want to.
It's an advantage,
share.
but it's not necessarily a hindrance.
Yes.
And Red Note just started that cool monthly membership thing.
Yep.
That's cool.
And eventually there's going to be a
Jealous.
second Red Note location.
Oh yeah, and then round ones are starting to get more SMX cabs. We just saw one in Atlanta pop up.
We
this
didn't talk
week.
about that in the news. There's cabs are flying out like crazy. They're going all over the world, but especially round
over
one.
100 by the end of the year.
Oh,
Yeah, for
gosh.
our
Okay.
second round one location.
We have been talking for almost an hour and a half. It turns out that this is me and Jelly's like favorite topic
Yeah.
to talk about, and we could go forever and ever about how tournaments are made and what
I think
you
the
do. We didn't
viewers
even
saw
get to
me
some of the
yawning a little bit ago.
subtopics. I'm so sorry, Eesa. Why did we have you here? This is like you were the first person I scheduled with. Like, hey, it's me and you because Word might be out on this one, and then you just sat here like a mascot while I'm wearing the mascot costume. Well, we just talked about tournament structures.
We
at
need
each
a
other.
part 2 is what I'm hearing.
No, we talked so much about tournaments. Part 2 is next year after we see what we do explodes or doesn't explode. For Xmas next year, maybe. SMX Xmas. That's hard to say. So, all right, Eesa, since I've been so awful to you, how about I'm awful to you one more time and I make you outro the show? Can you do it?
All right. Well, come see us all at some tournaments, guys, and come make some edit charts, please. And
See Eesa at Winter
thanks.
Groove.
Yeah, see me at Winter
Yes,
Groove.
Winter Groove.
It's so easy to come to Vegas. It's fun. Let's all go.
See Jelly Slosh at twitch.tv/jelly_slosh.
See me at Easter's if I can ever get streaming working. Come help me figure out how to stream. Why is it
Go to
so-
Tucson and help Eesa figure out what's wrong with her stream.
Yeah, just come over here, someone.
And I'm at Zephyr Glaze, and Word is at Wordus. And we're going to be here next month. We promise we'll announce it sooner than the day of the podcast when we're going to be broadcasting. And we'll do that at the end of January because we're on a schedule now. But until then, what are we doing? What do we tell people to do?
See you next
Keep
year.
on stepping,
Keep on
maniacs.
stepping, maniacs. And then, whatchamacallit?
Keep on what?
If you celebrate Christmas, Merry Christmas. It's a couple days here in the U.S.
Bye.
Bye.
Let me hit you with the